You have heard about IAC using Terraform and Ansible. What about IAC with Nutanix? Let's take a look at what is the architecture for Nutanix Self-Service to do IAC. On the left-hand side, you have the developers that is actually working on the Visual Studio Code. And then in the middle side, we have a self-service DSL Docker containers, which we're going to connect to the self-service. So the developers will code in the Visual Studio Code and propagate that changes into the self-service to provision and to perform day 2 actions. Let's take a look how it looks like in the Visual Studio Code. This is the Visual Studio editor where the developers were on. On the left-hand panel, you will see that there are multiple blueprints I have already decompiled. And let's take a look at one of the blueprints, and this is the blueprint.py that is in the middle of the screen. So this is a multi-VM Red Hat IaaS blueprints, and this is how it looks like when you decompile that in the Visual Studio Code. So now instead of 2 GB of memory, I want to change that into a 3 GB of memory. And I can just click on Save. Let me shift my terminal console out. This is the command I will use to compile the blueprint. Let me execute that. Now I'm going to use this command to create a new blueprint in the self-service servers. Let's see how it works. Okay, the blueprint is created successfully. Now I'm going to run this command to launch the blueprint into an application. Let me just keep the default for each of these dynamic variables. And you can see that the blueprint has been launched successfully. Now let's go back to the UI to look at it. Let me just refresh my applications. And you can see that a new VM has been provisioned for these applications. This is how easy it is to use IAC in self-service.